There is something nobody tells you about being the one who stays faithful when everything around you is falling apart. Nobody tells you how exhausting it is. Nobody tells you that doing the right thing, again and again, in the dark, with no applause and no confirmation, can wear a person down to almost nothing. And nobody tells you that the very exhaustion you are carrying right now is not a sign that you are losing. It is a sign that you have been chosen for something that most people were never built to carry. You need to hear that again. The weight you are feeling is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of faithfulness. And faithfulness, real faithfulness, the kind that holds on when the logic runs out and the encouragement dries up, and the people around you stop asking how you are doing. That kind of faithfulness does not go unnoticed by heaven. It is being recorded. Every single act of obedience that nobody clapped for, every prayer you whispered into a ceiling that felt like concrete, every morning you got up and chose to keep going when you had every rational reason to stop. Heaven has been watching all of it. Beloved and chosen one, this message was not placed in front of you by accident. You did not stumble here. You were guided here because there is something you need to hear today that the people around you do not have the language to say to you. You have been obeying against all odds. You have been saying yes to something you could not fully see, trusting a process that gave you very little in return, at least in the way the world measures return. And I want you to know that the season of that kind of obedience, the invisible obedience, the costly obedience, the obedience that nobody rewarded you for, that season is turning. Before we go any further, I want to name something for you. I want to name the signs that tell me you are the one this message was made for. Because chosen ones carry a specific kind of fingerprint, and if you recognize yourself in these signs, then you need to stay with me all the way to the end of what I am about to share with you. The first sign is this. You have been dreaming more clearly lately. Not necessarily pleasant dreams, but vivid ones. Dreams that feel like they are trying to tell you something. Dreams that leave you with a feeling in the morning that you cannot quite shake. That is not random. That is the frequency of something being opened in you. The second sign is this. You have been feeling a frustration that you cannot fully explain. Not anger at a specific person, not sadness about a specific event, but a deep, restless stirring. Like something inside you is pressing against the walls of the life you are currently living. That frustration is not a malfunction. That is a calling that has outgrown the container it has been placed in. The third sign is this. The things that used to satisfy you no longer do. The conversations feel shallow. The distractions do not distract anymore. The things you used to reach for when you needed comfort are no longer reaching back. That hollowness is not depression, though I know it can feel very close to it. That hollowness is hunger, spiritual hunger. The kind that only gets activated when something new is about to be placed in front of you. The fourth sign is this. You have been feeling an unusual sense of being watched over. Not in a threatening way, but in a quiet, almost unexplainable way. Like something is close. Like the air around you has changed its quality. Like you are on the edge of something you cannot name, but you can feel. That feeling is accurate. You are not imagining it. And the fifth sign is this. You are here. You clicked on this. You stayed when you could have scrolled. Something in you said stay. And that same something has been saying stay for a long time, through situations and seasons and silences that would have broken most people. That staying is not stubbornness. It is assignment. You are here because you were meant to be here, and everything that brought you to this moment, including the hard parts, especially the hard parts, was part of a navigation system you did not design. Chosen one, I want you to feel something settle in you right now. Not a performance of peace, but a genuine quiet settling. Heaven has not forgotten you. Heaven has not moved on to someone more qualified, or more consistent, or more put together. Heaven backed you before you knew you needed backing, and heaven is backing you still. The obedience you gave in the dark is about to be honored in the open. The patience you extended when it felt pointless is about to be reframed as wisdom. And the story that felt like it had stalled is about to move, not gradually, not eventually, but now. You have not been waiting for this moment. This moment has been waiting for you. If you made it through part 1 and something in your chest loosened even slightly, I want you to stay with that feeling. Do not analyze it yet. Do not talk yourself out of it. Just let it be there. Because what you just felt is real, and it deserves space before we move forward. What I want to do now is something that very few people will ever do for you. I want to name exactly what you have been feeling, not in general terms, not in the way that could apply to anyone, but in the specific, precise language of someone who has been sitting in the same kind of season you have been sitting in. Because one of the loneliest parts of being a chosen one is that the things you feel are so particular, so layered, so difficult to translate, that most people in your life simply do not have the vocabulary to meet you where you are. So you stop trying to explain. You smile when someone asks how you are doing. You say fine. You say busy. You say getting through it. And inside, something quietly aches because the truth is so much more complicated than any of those answers. So let me try to tell the truth for you today. The first thing I want to name is this. Lately, and it may have been coming in waves for weeks or even months, you have been hit by a sudden, almost overwhelming sadness about the past. Not a sadness you chose to feel. Not a sadness you sat down and decided to entertain. It just arrives. Maybe in the shower. Maybe driving home. Maybe in the middle of a perfectly ordinary afternoon when nothing is wrong and everything still feels like it is. And the sadness is specific. It is the sadness of things that did not happen the way they were supposed to. Conversations that ended wrong. Doors that closed before you were ready. Moments you missed. Seasons you cannot get back. And you wonder sometimes if that sadness means you are stuck. If it means you have not moved on the way you should have. But I want to tell you something. That sadness is not a sign that you are stuck. It is a sign that your spirit is doing an audit. It is clearing the books before a new chapter opens. The grief you feel about the past is not holding you back. It is completing something that needed to be completed before you could walk fully into what is next. The second thing I want to name is this. Familiar places and people have started to feel heavy in a way they did not before. Places you used to find comfort in now feel slightly off, like the furniture has been rearranged just enough to make the room feel wrong. People you have known for years suddenly feel distant, not because anything dramatic happened, but because something in you has shifted and the connection no longer fits the same way it used to. And you have probably felt guilty about that. You have probably told yourself that something is wrong with you, that you are being ungrateful or difficult or too sensitive. But what is actually happening is simpler and more sacred than that. You are outgrowing. And outgrowing is not a betrayal. It is not a sin. It is the natural consequence of someone who has been saying yes to growth when everything around them stayed the same. The third thing I want to name is this. You keep having a recurring experience, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in waking life, of standing in front of a door that will not open. You can see it. You can feel that something is on the other side of it. You have knocked. You have waited. You have walked away and come back. And the door is still there, still closed, still holding something that feels like it belongs to you. That image is not a symbol of rejection. That image is a symbol of readiness, being prepared on the other side. The door is not locked against you. The door is being prepared for you. What is behind it is being arranged, and the timing of its opening is not random. It is precise. The fourth thing I want to name is this. You keep receiving the same message from multiple, completely unrelated sources. A line in a song, a sentence someone says in passing, a paragraph in a book you picked up almost by accident, a comment under a video, a dream, a number on a clock at a moment when you were thinking of something specific. And each time it happens, you feel a chill or a warmth or a recognition that sits somewhere between your chest and your throat. That is not coincidence. Chosen ones are tracked. They are communicated with through pattern. And when the same message keeps finding you through different vehicles, it is because heaven is not whispering anymore. It is speaking clearly, and it chose you to be the one who could hear it. Now I want to sit with you for a moment in the harder parts, not rush past them, not reframe them too quickly, because I know that behind the spiritual signs and the sacred language, there are real, human, painful things that you carry. I know that some of you have not slept well in a long time. Not insomnia in a clinical sense necessarily, but that particular inability to settle that comes from carrying too much for too long. Your body lies down, but your mind does not. You replay things. You rehearse conversations. You calculate distances between where you are and where you thought you would be by now. And the silence of the night, instead of being restful, becomes a space where all the things you manage to avoid thinking about during the day come back and sit on your chest. That some of lonely in a way that is very hard to admit. Not because you have no people around you. Some of you are surrounded by people. But loneliness in the chosen one season is not about the number of people in the room. It is about the feeling of being fundamentally unseen, of doing the right thing and having it go unnoticed, of growing and changing and becoming and having nobody close enough to witness it and name it back to you. That loneliness is real, and I am not going to tell you it does not count. I know that some of you feel wronged, genuinely, specifically wronged, by people who took from you, by systems that overlooked you, by opportunities that went to people who had not earned them the way you had, and you have tried to be gracious about it. You have tried not to be bitter. But somewhere underneath the grace, there is a wound that is not fully closed, and it asks sometimes, in the quiet, whether the effort was ever worth it. I want you to know that wound is not weakness. It is evidence that you invested. You cannot be wounded by something you never cared about. And I know that many of you have felt deeply, persistently misunderstood. Like the version of you that people see and respond to is not the full version. Like there is a depth to you that very few people have ever actually touched. Like your choices, your pace, your path, your priorities make sense to you in a way that you have almost given up trying to explain to others. And that misunderstanding has made you quieter over the years, more contained, more careful about what you share and with whom. But here is what I want you to understand, and this is the reframe I have been leading toward. The waiting you have been in has not been punishment. It has been positioning. There is a difference, and the difference is everything. Punishment is given to someone who has done wrong. Positioning is given to someone who is being prepared for something that requires more than what they currently carry. You have not been overlooked by heaven. You have been placed deliberately, specifically, with intention. The waiting was not God turning away from you. The waiting was God working around you, building things you could not see from where you were standing, arranging things that required your stillness in order to be set in place correctly. There is a word I want to give you for what you are experiencing right now, and that word is positioned. Not ignored, not forgotten, not passed over, positioned. You are in the right place. You are in the right season. And what is about to move in your life is going to make sense of the waiting in a way that no explanation could right now. If you recognize yourself in anything I have named today, I want you to type the words "I see it" in the comment section below. Not for performance, not for the algorithm, though it does help this message reach others who need it just as much as you do, but as an act of declaration for yourself, as a way of saying, out loud, in whatever small digital way this is, that you see what is happening, that you are not going to miss this moment, that you are awake to what heaven is doing. Type "I see it" if this is you. And while you are there, I want to ask you something gently. This channel exists because someone decided that chosen ones deserve a place where their experience gets named, where their season gets honored, where the things nobody says out loud finally get said. If this message met you somewhere real today, if it named something you have been carrying alone, consider supporting this work with a donation, whatever amount feels right, whatever you are able. It does not have to be large. What matters is the intention behind it. Your support keeps this alive for the next person who's going to arrive here in the dark at 3 in the morning, desperate for someone to name what they are feeling. You were that person once. Maybe you were that person today, and someone else is coming behind you who needs exactly this. If you can give, please give. The link is available below. And if you cannot give right now, a like, a share, a subscription, those things matter too. They are how this message finds the ones who are still waiting to be found. You are not alone in this season. Across the world right now, other chosen ones are sitting with exactly what you are sitting with. And every single one of them is being positioned, just like you, for something that is already on its way. Something shifted in you when you read what I just named. I could feel it even through the distance of a screen and a speaker, because that is how it works with chosen ones. The recognition is physical. It lands somewhere in the body before the mind has time to process it. And now that the recognition has settled, now that you have let yourself be seen for a moment in the specific and honest way that we just moved through together, I want to give you something practical. Because one of the things that chosen ones struggle with most is the gap between the spiritual awareness they carry and the practical tools available to them. You can feel the frequency of something shifting. You can sense the season turning. But then Monday arrives and you need something to do with your hands, something to do with your mind, something that bridges the sacred and the ordinary in a way that keeps you grounded and moving forward at the same time. So today I want to give you something concrete, something you can begin today, not next week, not when your circumstances change, not when you feel more ready or more stable or more worthy. Today, right now, with the life you have, in the body you are in, with the time you actually have available and not the time you wish you had. This is what I call the return protocol, and it has 3 steps. Each step is simple enough to be done anywhere. You do not need a quiet room, though quiet helps. You do not need a special practice background. You do not need to be in a particular emotional state. In fact, this protocol was designed specifically for people who are not in a good emotional state, for the ones who are running low, who are tired in the deep way, who would love to feel spiritually connected, but honestly do not know where to begin. Before I walk you through the 3 steps, I want to say something about the nature of practice itself. Many chosen ones carry a complicated relationship with spiritual practice. Maybe you grew up with a specific religious framework that gave you tools, and then something happened. A disappointment, a disillusionment, a season of doubt, and those tools started to feel hollow or inaccessible. Maybe you have tried meditation apps and journaling routines and morning rituals, and none of them stuck because the gap between how they made you feel and how your actual life felt was too wide to bridge consistently. Maybe you have simply been so depleted for so long that the idea of adding anything to your day, even something good, feels like one more demand on a supply that is already empty. I hear all of that, and I want to tell you that what I am about to give you is not one more thing add to a list. It is not a performance. It is not a discipline in the punishing sense of that word. It is more like a signal, a tuning, the way you might adjust the dial on a radio, not to create the music but to find the frequency where the music that is already playing becomes clear. The music is already there. Your role in this is simply to find the frequency, and these 3 steps will help you do that. Step 1. I want you to think of something you are grateful for that did not happen. Not something good that came to you. Not a blessing you received. I want you to go in the opposite direction. I want you to think of a specific thing that you feared, that you dreaded, that you were certain was going to destroy something in your life, and it did not happen. Maybe it was a relationship that you thought was going to end and it survived. Maybe it was a health scare that turned out to be nothing. Maybe it was a financial collapse that came right to the edge and then, inexplicably, did not fall. Maybe it was a version of yourself that you were afraid you were becoming, and somehow you did not become that person. Maybe it was a door closing that felt catastrophic in the moment, and later you understood that the thing behind that door would have cost you more than you could afford. Take a moment right now and find that thing. It does not have to be dramatic. It does not have to be a major event. It can be quiet and specific and personal. But find the thing that did not happen and let yourself feel what it means that it did not happen. Because gratitude for what was withheld from you is one of the most powerful forms of trust available to a human being. It is easy to be grateful for what was given. It takes a different kind of spiritual maturity to be grateful for what was held back. And that maturity is exactly what this step is designed to activate in you. When you have found that thing, I want you to say this, either out loud or quietly in your mind. Say, "Thank you for what I did not have to carry." That is the whole statement. You do not need to elaborate. You do not need to make it beautiful or theological or perfectly worded. Just that. Thank you for what I did not have to carry. And let it land. Step 2. I want you to make one declaration that connects you to the truth of this moment in time. Not a statement about the future. Not a promise to yourself about who you are going to become. I want you to make a statement about right now, about this specific, real, imperfect, difficult, sacred moment you are standing in. Because chosen ones have a tendency to live in one of 2 places. Either they are rehearsing the past, replaying the wounds and the losses and the moments of failure, or they are projecting into the future, trying to manage and anticipate and control what is coming so that they can feel safe. And both of those places, as understandable as they are, as human as they are, pull you out of the only moment where heaven can actually meet you, which is now. So the declaration for step 2 is this. Say the following words. Say them slowly, with the weight they deserve. Say, "This is my appointed moment." Not "this will be my appointed moment." Not "this might become my appointed moment if I do everything right." This is present tense, right now. This specific breath, this specific day, the specific version of you with all the weariness and all the wonder and all the complicated feelings. This is the appointed moment, not a rehearsal for it, not a stepping stone toward it. This is it. I know that declaration may feel difficult to make honestly. I know that looking at the circumstances of your life right now and declaring that this is an appointed moment may feel like a stretch. But faith has always operated in exactly that kind of tension. It is not the declaration of someone who already sees everything clearly. It is the declaration of someone who chooses to align their words with a truth that their circumstances have not yet confirmed. And that alignment, that deliberate choice to speak the truth before you can see it, is one of the most powerful things a human being can do. Say it again. This is my appointed moment, and let it move through you. Step 3. I want you to give yourself 7 minutes of silence. Not silence in the sense of emptying your mind, because that is not actually what silence means in the deepest traditions of spiritual practice. Not silence in the sense of achieving stillness or performing peace. I mean simply this. For 7 minutes, put down the noise, put down the phone, put down the task, put down the internal monologue that is always running, always managing, always preparing for the next thing, and just exist. Breathe. Let whatever is in you rise without fighting it and fall without chasing it. 7 minutes. That is all. Not an hour. Not a structured meditation session with a cushion and a specific posture and a certification behind it. 7 minutes of chosen stillness. 7 minutes of saying to heaven, I am here. I am available. I am not running from this moment or toward the next one. I am here. Now I want to tell you something about why 7 minutes specifically. Because this is not an arbitrary number, and it matters. There is something that happens in the brain during a sustained period of quiet attention that cannot happen in shorter bursts. The mind needs time to move through its initial resistance, its chatter, its list-making, and its reviewing and its worrying, before it can access the deeper layer underneath. And that deeper layer, the one that researchers who study the brain and its frequencies have been documenting for decades, is where something remarkable begins to occur. It is where the higher functions of the brain, the ones associated with insight and creativity and what some call breakthrough thinking, begin to come online in a way that ordinary waking consciousness does not allow. 7 minutes is the threshold. It is the minimum time needed to cross from the surface into the depth. And I mention this now, not just as a spiritual principle, but as a bridge. Because what I want to share with you next connects this ancient practice to something that modern neuroscience has been quietly confirming. Something that a particular researcher spent more than 30 years of his life documenting, and something that may very well be the most practical tool a chosen one in your exact season could have access to right now. So begin there today. Do not wait for a better day. Do not wait for a calmer week. Do not wait until the circumstances feel more aligned. Begin today with these 3 steps. Find something you are grateful for that did not happen. Make the declaration that this is your appointed moment. And give yourself 7 minutes of deliberate, chosen silence because something is being activated in you. Something that has been waiting for exactly this kind of intentional cooperation from you. And the next thing I am going to share with you is going to help you understand not just spiritually, but scientifically what is happening inside you when you practice that silence, and why it matters more than you have ever been told. The obedience you gave when no one was watching has been building something inside you, a frequency, a signal. And that signal is about to be amplified in a way that changes everything. Stay with me. Stay with me here, because what I am about to share with you is the bridge between everything you have felt spiritually and everything that science has quietly been confirming for a very long time. You have always known that chosen ones carry something different. You have felt it, not as arrogance, not as superiority, but as a quiet, persistent awareness that the way you experience the world, the depth at which you feel things, the frequency at which you seem to operate, is not quite the same as everyone around you. And for most of your life, that difference has been more burden than gift. It has made you feel out of place. It has made you feel like too much and not enough at the same time. It has made you wonder, in your most honest moments, whether the thing that makes you different is actually an advantage or just another form of isolation. What I want to tell you now is this: that frequency you carry is real. It is not metaphor. It is not spiritual poetry. It is measurable. And researchers who have spent their careers studying the human brain have a name for it. They call it gamma. Gamma brainwave frequency is the highest measurable frequency of electrical activity in the human brain. It operates at above 40 cycles per second. And what researchers have found consistently across decades of study is that gamma activity is associated with the highest levels of cognitive function available to a human being. We are talking about peak insight, breakthrough thinking, the kind of clarity that arrives suddenly after a long period of struggle and makes everything that was confusing suddenly make sense. The kind of creativity that does not feel like effort but like reception, like you are not generating the idea but receiving it from somewhere beyond you. The kind of focus that does not require force because it is not being pushed from the outside, but pulled from something deep within. Gamma is also the frequency that spikes in the moments that meditators and mystics across every tradition have described as transcendent. The moments of deep prayer that feel like contact. The moments of sudden peace that make no rational sense given the circumstances. The moments where something shifts in you and you cannot explain it, but you know with a certainty that bypasses logic that something has changed. Chosen ones carry a natural orientation toward this frequency. But here is what happens. Life happens. Stress accumulates. The years of waiting and straining and carrying and pushing and being overlooked and being patient and being strong when strength was the only option available. All of that accumulates in the nervous system. And over time, the brain falls away from gamma and toward the survival frequencies, the lower, more urgent frequencies that are designed for managing threat and navigating danger. Frequencies that are essential in a crisis, but that crowd out the higher functions when they run too long and too loud. The result is that a chosen one who is genuinely carrying a gamma orientation, who was designed to operate at the frequency of insight and breakthrough and divine reception, finds themselves stuck in a lower register. Not because something is broken, not because they have lost their gift, but because the nervous system has been doing its job of keeping them alive through a very long and very difficult season. And that job has come at a cost. This is where the research of Dr. James Rivers becomes important. For you to know about, Dr. Rivers is a neuroscientist with more than 30 years of dedicated research into the relationship between brainwave frequencies and human potential. His academic background is rooted in the neuroscience programs at MIT, and his research has extended into collaborations with institutions including NASA, where the question of how to optimize human cognitive performance under conditions of extreme stress and sustained pressure has been a subject of serious scientific interest. What Dr. Rivers found, after decades of research and thousands of hours of documented study, is something that bridges the world of spiritual tradition and modern neuroscience in a way that very few researchers have been willing to stand behind publicly. He found that the brain can be guided, not forced, not manipulated. Guided, the way a tuning fork guides a string instrument into resonance, the way a voice can settle a room. The brain, when exposed to specific, precisely calibrated sound frequencies, will naturally begin to synchronize with those frequencies in a process that researchers call brainwave entrainment. And when the frequencies used are those associated with theta and gamma states, the results are not subtle. Theta waves, operating between 4 and 8 cycles per second, are the frequencies associated with deep creativity, accelerated learning, intuition, and the kind of relaxed receptivity that makes genuine spiritual connection possible. These are the waves that children operate in almost constantly, which is why children learn so rapidly, why they imagine so freely, why they have not yet built the walls that adults construct around their inner experience. Theta is also the wave state that the most advanced meditators in the world spend years of disciplined practice trying to access. And gamma, as I described, is the frequency of peak insight, of the eureka moment, of the kind of thinking that does not just solve the problem in front of you, but reorganizes the way you see the entire landscape. What Dr. Rivers developed after all of those years and all of that research is an audio program that uses precisely calibrated sound frequencies, including binaural beats and isochronic tones, to guide the brain gently and naturally into these elevated states. The program is called the Genius Wave, and the reason I am telling you about it today, in the context of everything we have been walking through together, is because the practice I gave you in step 3, those 7 minutes of deliberate silence, is exactly the protocol that the Genius Wave is designed to support and deepen. 7 minutes is not arbitrary for Dr. Rivers either. His research identified 7 minutes as the threshold duration at which the brain, when supported by the right auditory frequencies, moves from surface-level awareness into the deeper theta and gamma states, where real cognitive and creative transformation becomes possible. Not eventually, not after weeks of practice, in the session itself, in the 7 minutes themselves. Now I want to tell you about someone. A woman who came to the Genius Wave in a season that sounds very much like the one you may be sitting in right now. She had been in a professional holding pattern for nearly 3 years. She was qualified, she was capable, she was working hard, and nothing was moving. Every door she knocked on either closed quietly or led to another hallway with another closed door at the end of it. She was not someone who gave up easily. She had the kind of faith that keeps going even when going feels pointless. But she told the story herself that by the time she found the Genius Wave, she had almost stopped believing that things could actually change for her specifically. She had faith in a general, theological sense. But the personal, specific, this is going to happen for me kind of faith had gotten very quiet. She used the Genius Wave consistently for 3 weeks, 7 minutes. Each morning, before the rest of her day began, before the noise and the demand and the management of everything that needed to be managed. And she described the shift not as a sudden dramatic event, but as a gradual clearing, like a window being cleaned. The same view, but progressively more visible. By the end of the 3rd week, she told me she had an idea. Not a desperate grasping, I need to make something happen kind of idea, but a clear, calm, specific idea that arrived quietly during one of her morning sessions and stayed. She acted on it. Within 6 weeks of acting on it, she had an offer on the table that represented not just a professional breakthrough, but a personal one. She said it felt less like she had finally gotten lucky, and more like she had finally gotten clear, and the clarity had done the rest. That is what gamma does. That is what theta does. And that is what the Genius Wave was designed to unlock in you. Now, I know some of you are already doing the calculation. And I want to speak to that directly before we go any further, because I have learned that the moment a practical tool is introduced, a part of the mind begins to build a case against it. And that case usually sounds something like this. $39 is not nothing, especially not right now. Especially not when the season you are in has already cost you more than you can count. I hear that. That feeling is completely valid. You have already given so much. You have already invested in things that promised change and did not deliver it. And the idea of reaching into a limited resource and extending trust one more time feels risky in a way that is very specific and very real. So I want to be honest with you about what $39 is and is not. It is not a magic solution. It is not a replacement for the work you are doing, the faith you are building, the obedience you are practicing. What it is a tool, a specific, research-backed, precisely designed tool that supports and accelerates the exact kind of neurological shift that your brain needs in order to move from the survival frequencies back into the elevated frequencies you were designed to operate in. It is 7 minutes a day. It requires nothing from you except the willingness to sit with it. No special skill, no meditation experience, no prior knowledge. Just you, a pair of headphones, and 7 minutes. The regular price for the Genius Wave is $49. Through the link in the pinned comment below, you can access it today for $39. That price comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee. All of it. No questions asked. If you use it for 90 days and you do not feel that something has shifted, you get every dollar back. Dr. Rivers stands behind that guarantee because the research stands behind it. One thing I need to say clearly: there are imitation versions of this program circulating online. Please do not purchase from any source other than the single link in the pinned comment below. The calibration of the frequencies matters. The precision matters. An imitation version with incorrect frequencies is not just ineffective. It is a waste of the trust you are extending. Go only through the pinned link. That is the only source I can vouch for, and the only source where the guarantee applies. And I want you to know that this offer is not permanent. The $39 access is available for a limited time and to a limited number of people. When it closes, it closes. I am not saying that to pressure you. I am saying it because chosen ones have a long history of arriving at the right door at the right moment, and then waiting too long to walk through it. Do not do that here. If something in you said yes while I was speaking, honor that yes. The pinned comment is below. The link is there. And what is waiting for you on the other side of 7 minutes is more than you have been told to expect. Before we move forward, I want to stay here for a moment. Right here, in this specific place, before the encouragement, and before the reframe, and before the promise of what is coming. Because I have noticed something about the way chosen ones are spoken to. Even in spaces like this one, even in messages that are genuinely trying to honor them, there is a tendency to rush, to get through the hard part quickly, to name the pain and then immediately pivot to the silver lining, as if sitting with the weight of what has been lost is something dangerous, something that needs to be managed and moved past before it does damage. And I want to do something different today. I want to stay here with you, in the weight, in the real, unvarnished, honest accounting of what these years have actually cost you. Because you deserve that. Not just the victory language, not just the positioning narrative. You deserve to have someone look directly at what was taken from you and say, without rushing past it, that it mattered, that it was real, that the cost was not nothing. So let me say it plainly. The years of waiting, and I do not know exactly how many years your waiting has been, whether it is 2 or 5 or 10 or more, Those years took something from you, and I want to name what they took specifically without softening it. They took relationships that could have been built. There were people who came into your life during this season. People who might have become something real and lasting, something that held you and challenged you and grew with you. And because you were in a season of such depletion, such guardedness, such careful management of your own limited emotional resources, you could not show up for those connections the way you would have wanted to. You held back, not because you did not care, but because you were surviving. And some of those people moved on. Some of those connections dried up before they ever fully bloomed. And there is a grief in that which is very specific and very quiet. The grief of the relationship that almost was. The grief of the version of yourself that would have been more present, more open, more available if the season had been lighter. The years took career ground that you could have covered. There were opportunities that required a kind of bold, forward movement that the exhaustion of this season did not allow. There were risks you would have taken if you had not been so worn down. There were conversations you would have initiated, doors you would have knocked on more persistently, visions you would have pursued more aggressively, if you had not been carrying so much weight just to stay functional. And watching other people move forward, people who perhaps had less qualification but more energy, less depth but more availability. That watching has been one of the quieter cruelties of this season. You did not fall behind because you were not good enough. You fell behind because you were carrying something that most people around you were not being asked to carry. The years took your freedom to dream out loud. Do you remember when you used to say the big things out loud? When you used to tell people what you were believing for, what you were working toward, what you could see even if you could not yet touch it. And then, slowly, over the course of disappointments and delayed timelines, and the particular humiliation of telling someone your dream and watching their face do the thing faces do when they do not believe what you are saying, you stopped. You learned to keep the big things internal, to protect them from the exposure that had cost you before. And the dreams did not die. They are still there. I know they are. I can hear them underneath everything we have been talking about. But the freedom to speak them, to say them with the full-throated confidence of someone who has not yet learned to brace for disappointment, that freedom was one of the quieter casualties of this season. And the years took something perhaps more precious than any of those things. They took portions of your faith in yourself. Not your faith in God, not your theological convictions, but the simple, human, necessary belief that you specifically are someone whose efforts produce results. That you specifically are someone who tries things and they work. That you specifically are someone who is not somehow exempt from the good things that happen to other people. Because when you do everything right for long enough and the results do not match the effort, something very specific begins to erode. A quiet voice starts asking questions. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe there is something about me specifically that does not qualify. Maybe the promises were for other people, and I was mistaken to think they included me. That voice is a liar. But it is a very convincing liar, and it has had a lot of uncontested time in your inner world. I am not moving past any of that today. I am sitting in it with you, because it deserves to be sat in. I want to tell you about a man named Joseph, and I am not going to tell you the part of his story that ends in triumph, because that part comes later, and right now we are not in the later. I want to tell you about the middle part, the part that most people rush through to get to the palace. Joseph was a young man who carried a genuine gift. He could perceive things that others could not. He dreamed in a way that was specific and true. And that gift, instead of protecting him, made him a target. His own brothers, the people who were supposed to be his closest community, looked at what he carried and decided they wanted to be rid of it. They threw him into a pit, and then they sold him into slavery. And he went from being someone's beloved son to being someone's purchased property, not because he had done anything wrong, but because the gift he carried made people around him uncomfortable. Then, when he had rebuilt something in that foreign place, when he had found a way to be faithful and excellent even inside a system that was not his and had not chosen him, it happened again. He was falsely accused. He was thrown into prison, and the Bible does not rush this part. It stays in the prison with Joseph for a long time. It describes years, not weeks, not months. Years of Joseph doing the right thing, being faithful in the small things, helping the people around him, maintaining his integrity in conditions that offered him every rational excuse to abandon it, and seeing nothing change. The door stayed closed. The promise stayed invisible. The gift that was supposed to open the world to him seemed only to attract more confinement. I am not going to tell you what happens next for Joseph today, because today is not about the resolution. Today is about the recognition that the middle of the story, the part where you are doing everything right and nothing is moving, the part where the pit and the prison feel more real than the promise, that part is not a mistake in the narrative. It is the narrative. It is the necessary, non-negotiable, cannot be skipped part of the story of someone who is being prepared for something that ordinary circumstances could never have produced. Joseph in the prison is you in this season. Not because you are imprisoned, but because you are in a place that does not match your capacity. A place that does not reflect your calling. A place where your gifts are visible to the people immediately around you, but the door to the larger expression of those gifts is still, inexplicably, closed. And I want you to feel that. Not analyze it, not immediately reframe it, just feel it. Feel the weight of years that moved differently than you planned. Feel the grief of the things that were taken. Feel the specific ache of being someone who has obeyed and served and given and trusted and is still standing in a hallway instead of a room. Feel it, all of it. Let it be real, because here is what I know about grief that is fully felt. It does not stay, it moves. When you give grief permission to be itself, when you stop trying to manage it, or suppress it, or spiritualize it into something more palatable, it completes its work, and it passes. And what is left after genuine grief has done its work is not emptiness. It is space. A quality of interior spaciousness that was not available before, because it was occupied by the weight of unfelt things. The things I just named, the relationships, the career ground, the freedom to dream, the faith in yourself, they were real losses. They count. They were not nothing. And the God who positioned you in this season is not asking you to pretend otherwise. The God who watched you carry all of that is not standing at a distance saying be grateful and stop grieving. The God of the scripture that chose Joseph, that chose Ruth, that chose David, is a God who weeps with the ones he loves, who sits in the middle of the story and does not rush it, who honors the cost before the celebration begins. So today, before we go any further, I want to give you permission to grieve what this season took. Not indefinitely, not as a permanent residence, but as an honest, necessary, sacred acknowledgement that the cost was real, that you paid something, that it mattered, and that the God who asked you to pay it has been keeping every single receipt. You obeyed against all odds, and that obedience was not free. It cost you things that were precious, and heaven has not missed a single line item of that cost, not one. What comes next is not a reward for someone who pretended the cost was nothing. What comes next is an honoring of someone who paid the real price and kept going anyway. And that person is you. That has always been you. Even in the seasons when you were the only one who knew it. Stay with me, because what I am about to share with you next is going to change the way you understand every single one of those years. Not minimize them, not erase them, but illuminate them in a way that makes the waiting make sense for the very first time. What I want to give you now is a way of seeing time that is going to permanently change the way you interpret your own story. Not a reframe in the shallow sense, not a motivational pivot designed to make you feel better for a few hours before the wait returns. I mean a genuine structural shift in the way you understand what has been happening to you. Because one of the deepest sources of pain in the waiting season is not just the waiting itself. It is the way the waiting feels when it is measured against the wrong clock. And most of us, without realizing it, have been measuring our lives against exactly the wrong clock for a very long time. The ancient Greeks had two entirely different words for time, and I want you to sit with both of them, because together they are going to illuminate something about your life that you may never have had language for before. The first word is chronos. Chronos is the word we are most familiar with, even if we have never heard it named. Chronos is clock time. It is the time that moves in a straight line, second by second, minute by minute, day by day, year by year. It is the time that your calendar measures and your birthday marks and your anniversary counts. Chronos is the time that tells you how old you are, how long you have been waiting, how many months have passed since the promise was made, and how many more months seem to be passing without the promise arriving. Chronos is the time that produces the painful arithmetic of the chosen one season. You said this would happen by now. It has been 3 years. It has been 7 years. It has been longer than I planned, and longer than I can explain to the people around me who are watching and waiting for evidence that my faith was not misplaced. Chronos is the clock that has been measuring your waiting. And Chronos, I want to tell you gently but directly, is the wrong instrument for the kind of story you are living. The second word is Kairos. And Kairos is something entirely different. Kairos does not move in a straight line. Kairos is not measured in minutes or months or years. Kairos is the word the ancient Greeks used for a moment of unique, unrepeatable, decisive significance. A moment that carries within it a quality that no amount of calendar time can either produce or replicate. Kairos is the moment that is ripe, the moment that has been prepared for, even if the preparation was invisible. The moment that arrives not because enough Chronos time has accumulated, but because the conditions, the interior conditions, the spiritual conditions, the conditions of readiness and positioning and divine arrangement have finally aligned. When the scripture speaks of a set time, when it speaks of the fullness of time, when it speaks of the moment when heaven moved and the promise arrived, it is not using Chronos language. It is using Kairos language. It is describing something that could not have been rushed by effort or accelerated by striving. It is describing a moment that was always going to arrive exactly when it arrived, because its arrival was not dependent on the accumulation of clock time, but on the completion of a preparation that only heaven could oversee. Your waiting has not been Chronos time wasted. Your waiting has been Kairos time being prepared. The years that felt like they were moving without you, the years that the clock measured as delay, those years were not empty. They were not neutral. They were the interior preparation, the hidden work, the deep formation of a person who will be able to carry what is about to be placed in their hands without being destroyed by it. Because that is the thing about Kairos. The moment it brings is not small. The moment it brings is precisely calibrated to the person who receives it. And the person who receives a kairos moment must be a person who has been prepared to hold it, not perfectly, not without struggle or wound or scar, but prepared in the specific non-negotiable ways that only the kind of season you have been through could produce. You are not behind schedule. You have never been behind schedule. You have been on a kairos timeline, and kairos does not answer to chronos. It answers to something older, something deeper, something that was in motion long before you had a name for it. Now I want to give you a second concept, and this one comes from the Hebrew language, from the ancient text that has been describing the experience of God's chosen ones for thousands of years. The Hebrew word is kava. It is most commonly translated in English as the word wait, as in those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. But that translation, while not wrong, is deeply incomplete, because kava does not mean what we mean when we say wait. When we say wait, we mean sitting still, passive, marking time, doing nothing until the thing arrives, waiting in the way a person waits for a bus, standing at a stop, looking down the road, doing nothing except existing in the space between where they are and where they are trying to go. Kava means something completely different. The root of the word kava is the image of braiding a rope. Think about what it takes to braid a rope. You take multiple strands, each one insufficient on its own, each one capable of breaking under enough pressure if it stands alone, and you twist them together, over and under, repeatedly, with intention and with patience, until what emerges is something that could not have existed before the braiding. Something with a tensile strength that none of the individual strands possessed. Something capable of holding weight that would have snapped any single strand in an instant. That is what has been happening to you during the waiting. You have not been sitting at a bus stop. You have been braiding. Every year of the waiting has been another pass of the braid. Every season of difficulty, every act of obedience when obedience cost you something. Every choice to trust, when trust was the harder and more expensive option. Every morning you got up and kept going when stopping would have been easier. All of it has been a strand being added to the rope you are becoming. The waiting has not weakened you. It has been assembling you. And what is being assembled is not a fragile, easily broken version of who you were before the waiting began. What is being assembled is someone with a capacity, a tensile strength, a depth of character, and a breadth of compassion that the easy path could never have produced. The braiding was not a delay in the process. The braiding was the process. You are not delayed. You are being assembled. And when kava is complete, when the rope is finished, when the braiding has done what braiding does, what emerges is something ready to bear weight, ready to hold, ready to be used for something that requires exactly the strength that was built through exactly that process. You do not braid a rope and then leave it in a corner. You braid a rope because there is something that needs holding. There is a weight that needs bearing. There is a purpose that requires the specific kind of strength that only the braiding could produce. The rope is almost finished. The braiding is almost complete, and what it is about to be used for is exactly proportional to the length and the intensity of the process that produced it. Now I want to bring these two concepts together, kairos and kava, because in combination they tell a story that I believe is the truest description of your current moment that language can offer. You have been in a kava season, a season of braiding, a season where the strands of your character, your faith, your resilience, your compassion, your capacity for depth and for honesty, and for grace under pressure have been twisted together by the very pressures that felt like they were working against you. The things that felt like opposition were the tension in the braid. The things that felt like setback were the over and under of the strands being worked together. And now, at the convergence of all of that preparation, you are arriving at a Kairos moment. A moment that was always going to be here. A moment that Chronos time could neither accelerate nor delay. A moment that is precise and unrepeatable, and specifically calibrated for the person you have become through the braiding. This is the appointed time, not a time you chose, not a time you manufactured through effort or strategy, or the right combination of spiritual disciplines. The appointed time is a Hebrew concept rooted in the understanding that there are moments written into the fabric of a person's story before that story begins to unfold. Moments that are not dependent on human readiness in the ordinary sense, but on a divine readiness that has been building in and around and through the person, without their full awareness of it. The word used in the ancient text for this kind of appointed time carries within it the image of something that has been set, the way a table is set before guests arrive, the way a stage is prepared before the performer walks out, the way a seed that was planted in one season arrives at the moment of breaking through the soil in a completely different season. Not because it rushed or strained or tried harder, but because the appointed time for breaking through had finally come. What God has ordained, delay cannot cancel. Let that settle into you now, not as a phrase, not as a sentiment, but as a structural truth about the nature of your story. The promise that was spoken over your life, whether you heard it in prayer or felt it in that deep knowing that lives below language, that promise was not made by someone who did not account for the years it would take. The one who made it saw the pit and the prison before Joseph ever arrived there. The one who made it saw the desert before the promised land was ever described. The one who made it saw every year of your waiting before the waiting began. And the promise was not made in spite of what the waiting would cost. The promise was made with full knowledge of the cost, full awareness of the braiding that would be required, and full confidence that the appointed time, the Kairos moment, the convergence of Kava completed and divine timing arrived, would be worth every strand that went into the making of you. You did not miss your time. You are standing in it. Right now, this moment, this uncomfortable, uncertain, wearying, sacred, chosen, appointed moment is not the waiting room outside the real thing. This is the threshold of the real thing, and the door that is about to open is not going to open for someone who has not been braided the way you have been braided. It is going to open for you because you are the only one who has been prepared to walk through it. The preparation is real. The appointed time is now. And what heaven has ordained, nothing in your past, nothing in your present, and nothing in the days between here and the moment of arrival can cancel. Something is already moving. I want you to feel that before I say anything else, because it is not a future thing I am describing. It is a present thing, a right now thing. The shift that we have been talking about, the Kairos arrival, the completion of the Kava braiding, the appointed time breaking open. These are not things that are going to begin happening someday when the conditions look different. They are already in motion. And one of the most important things a chosen one can learn to do in this particular moment is to recognize movement before it becomes visible. Because the first signs of transformation are almost always felt before they are seen. They arrive as a stirring, as a restlessness that is different in quality from the restlessness of the waiting season, as a sense that something underneath the surface of your life is rearranging itself, quietly and with intention, in ways that your circumstances have not yet caught up to reflect. I feel something inside coming. That is the sentence I want you to sit with right now. Not "I hope something is coming." Not "maybe something will come eventually." "I feel something inside coming." Present tense, active, real. Because that is what is true. And I want to spend this part of our time together being very specific about what that something is, what it looks like in 3 concrete areas of your life, what you are going to feel as it arrives, and what you absolutely must not do during this period if you want to receive what is being sent to you without deflecting it before it lands. The first area where movement is already beginning is the area of clarity. And I want to describe this carefully because clarity in the chosen one's context is not the same thing as having all the answers. Clarity is not the elimination of uncertainty. Clarity is the emergence of a clear step, just one. Not the whole staircase, not the full blueprint, not the complete map from where you are to where you are going, just the next step. And what I want you to know is that for many of you who are listening to this right now, that step is already forming. It may be forming in the background of your awareness, in the place just below conscious thought, where the deepest processing happens. You may not be able to name it yet, but you have probably already felt it. A quiet pull in a specific direction. A recurring thought about a specific person you should reach out to, a specific thing you should begin, a specific door you should knock on again, even though it did not open the last time you tried. That pull is not random. That pull is the navigation system beginning to give you the next coordinate. And the worst thing you can do right now is dismiss it because it feels too small, because the step feels too ordinary for the scale of what you have been believing for. Chosen ones have a particular vulnerability here. They have been carrying a vision of such magnitude for so long that when the first concrete step toward it arrives, it looks disappointingly modest. It looks like too small a thing to connect to something so large. And so they wait for something that feels more proportional to the size of the dream. And in waiting for the bigger thing, they miss the small thing that was the actual door. Do not do that. When the clarity comes, and it is coming, act on it without requiring it to look impressive first. The most significant movements in your story are going to begin with steps that look ordinary to everyone around you and feel significant only to you. Trust that feeling. Act on that feeling. The step is the door. The second area where movement is already beginning is the area of relationships. And this one is going to feel strange before it feels good, so I want to prepare you for it. What you are about to experience, and some of you are already experiencing it, is a natural, almost organic shifting of your relational landscape. People who have been fixtures in your life for years are going to begin to feel more distant, not because of conflict necessarily, not because of betrayal or falling out, but because the frequency you are now operating at and the frequency they are comfortable with are no longer the same. You are moving, they may not be, and the distance that creates is real. And it is sometimes painful, and it is also completely necessary. New people are simultaneously going to begin appearing. And the remarkable thing about the people who are about to enter your life is how different they are going to feel from the connections you have had before. There is going to be a quality of recognition in meeting them that is difficult to explain. A sense of arriving home in a conversation you are having for the first time. A sense of being fully seen by someone who has no reason yet to see you that clearly. These are not random encounters. These are the people who belong to the next chapter of your story. The ones who were prepared for you while you were being prepared for them. And they are going to arrive at the right place and at the right time. Which means they are going to arrive before you feel ready. Because readiness in the way you have been defining it was never the requirement. What you must not do during this relational shift is try to hold on to what is moving away from you. The relationships that are creating distance right now are not all creating distance because something is wrong with them or with you. Some of them are creating distance because they were designed for a season that is ending, and holding them beyond their season costs you the energy and the attention that the new connections require. Release what is releasing. Do not chase what is moving on. Trust that the relational landscape being arranged around you right now is more aligned with your actual calling than the landscape you have been navigating up until now. The third area where movement is already beginning is the area of resources and opportunity. And this one I want to address very directly, because it is the area where chosen ones most often get in their own way. For years, you have been in a season of striving, of working hard and getting less than the work deserved, of watching opportunities go to people who seemed less prepared, less qualified, less invested, of fighting for every inch of ground, of pushing doors that did not want to open, of advocating for yourself in systems that did not seem designed to see you. That striving was necessary in its season. It kept you moving when movement was hard. But striving as a permanent mode becomes a form of control. And control in this new season is going to work against you in ways that striving never did before. What is coming in the area of resources and opportunity is not going to arrive because you fought for it hard enough. It is going to arrive because you are finally in the right position to receive it. And receiving is a different posture from striving. Receiving requires a kind of open-handedness, a kind of trust-filled availability that is very different from the white-knuckled pushing of the previous season. The opportunities that are about to find you, and I use that language deliberately, find you, are going to come from directions you did not anticipate, through connections you did not engineer, through doors you had stopped watching, because they had been closed long enough that you assumed they were permanently shut. You are about to stop fighting for what is yours and start walking into it, not because you stopped caring, not because you stopped being diligent, but because the positioning that has been happening beneath the surface of your life has finally aligned with the promise that was spoken over it. And when positioning and promise align, striving becomes unnecessary. What belongs to you does not require you to fight for it anymore. It requires you to recognize it and receive it when it arrives. Now I want to tell you what you must not do during this entire period of movement, across all three of these areas. And I want to be direct about it, because this is the place where many chosen ones lose what was being sent to them. Do not shrink back into familiarity when the movement begins to feel real. There is a particular kind of fear that arrives, not in the absence of good things, but in their presence. When the door actually begins to open, when the clarity actually begins to emerge, when the new person actually appears and the opportunity actually knocks. There is a voice that says, "This is too good, this is too much, this is not actually for me. Something is going to go wrong." That voice is the voice of a nervous system that has been living in survival mode for so long that abundance feels more threatening than scarcity. That voice is not wisdom, it is habit. And recognizing the difference between wisdom and habit in that moment is one of the most important things you will ever do. Do not talk yourself out of the good thing, because the good thing is unfamiliar. Do not sabotage the new relationship, because being fully seen feels more vulnerable than being overlooked. Do not dismiss the opportunity because it arrived in a form you did not expect. And do not, under any circumstances, go back to the striving mode when the receiving mode feels too passive, too trusting, too much like letting go of the control that has felt like the only protection you had. The protection you needed in the striving season was necessary, but the striving season is ending, and the protection you need now is not the protection of control. It is the protection of trust. Trust that what is moving toward you has been prepared with the same precision and intention that prepared you to receive it. Trust that the clarity is real. Trust that the people arriving are not accidents. Trust that the resources and opportunities about to find you are not too good to be true. They are exactly as good as the God who arranged them, intended them to be. You have carried something inside you for a long time. A knowing that something larger was coming. A faith that persisted even when the evidence ran out. A hope that refused to die even the seasons that gave it every reason to. That something is not on its way anymore. It is arriving, right now, in the 3 areas I just named, and in other areas specific to your story that I cannot name from here, but that you already feel in the particular way that chosen ones feel what is coming before it becomes visible. If you recognize this movement in your own life, if you feel the stirring I have been describing, if something in you is saying, yes, that is what this is, then I want you to type the word I receive in the comments section below. Not as performance, as declaration, as a deliberate, conscious, intentional act of aligning your words with what your spirit already knows is true. Type, I receive, because declaration is one of the ways that chosen ones cooperate with what heaven is sending. You do not just wait for it passively. You name it. You claim it. You say out loud, in whatever small way this is, that you are available, that you are open, that you are ready to receive what has been prepared for you. Type I receive and mean it with everything in you. Because what is coming is real, and it is already on its way. And you, beloved chosen one, are exactly the right person in exactly the right moment, standing in exactly the right place to meet it. The movement I just described in those 3 areas is not abstract. It is not theoretical. It is already happening in the fabric of your story. And I want you to carry that awareness forward with you as we move into this next part together. Because what I want to do now is give you something that goes beyond the description of what is coming. I want to give you a name for who you are becoming, not who you will be someday when all the pieces finally fall into place. Who you are becoming right now, in this specific moment, as a result of everything you have carried and everything you have survived and everything you chose to keep doing, even when the choosing was the hardest thing available to you. Because one of the things that happens to chosen ones over the course of a long and costly season is that they lose the language for themselves. They can describe the waiting. They can describe the pain. They can describe the dreams and the disappointments and the moments of almost and not yet. But they lose the ability to describe themselves from the inside in a way that is dignified and true and proportional to what they have actually done. They start using words like stuck or behind or struggling or surviving. And those words, while honest in their way, are not the full story. They are the chronos story, the clock time story, the story measured against a timeline that was never the right instrument for the life they are living. So today I want to give you the full story. I want to give you a name that fits. The name I want to give you is this: you are a waymaker. And I want to sit with that word for a moment before I explain it, because it is not a title that gets handed out lightly, and it is not a label designed to make you feel temporarily better about a hard season. It is a description, a precise, honest, sacred description of something you have actually been doing in the real world with real cost for the entire length of this journey. A waymaker is someone who creates a path where no path existed before. Not because they had a map, not because someone ahead of them had already cleared the ground and left markers to follow. But because they kept moving in the direction they were called to move, even when the terrain was unmarked and the footing was uncertain, and the people around them could not see what they were walking toward or understand why they kept going. A waymaker does not find the way. A waymaker becomes the way. Their obedience, their persistence, their willingness to keep choosing forward when backward would have been so much easier. That is, the act of making. Every step they took in the dark created a path that did not exist before their foot landed on it. Think about what that means in the context of your life. Every season where you chose to trust when the evidence ran out, you were making a way. Every morning you got up and kept going when stopping would have been the rational, defensible, completely understandable choice. You were making a way. Every time you said yes to something you could not fully see. Every time you extended grace when bitterness would have been more convenient. Every time you held on to a promise that the people around you had quietly stopped believing in. You were not just surviving, you were constructing something. You were laying ground that had never been laid before in your specific story, in your specific lineage, in the specific community and context and history that shaped you. And here is what is true about a waymaker that is different from simply being a determined or resilient person. A waymaker does not just create a path for themselves. The path they make, the ground they lay by the sheer force of their obedient movement forward, that path is available to everyone who comes behind them. The way you made through the hardest parts of this season is not going to disappear when you step into the open space on the other side of the threshold. It is going to remain. It is going to be visible in ways you may never fully see from where you are standing, to the people in your life, in your family, in your community, who are watching you, whether or not you know they are watching, who are taking courage from your movement, whether or not they have told you so, who are going to walk differently, choose differently, believe differently, because you made a way that showed them it was possible to walk it. You did not just survive this season, you built something in it, something that outlasts you and extends beyond you and belongs not just to your story, but to the larger story of everyone whose life has intersected with yours. That is who you are. That is the name that fits, Waymaker. Now I want to take you somewhere. I want to lead you through a short visualization, and I am going to ask you to stay with it, even if visualization is not something you have practiced before. You do not have to be skilled at this. You just have to be willing to let the image land. I want you to picture yourself standing at a threshold. Not a metaphorical threshold in a vague sense, but a specific, physical, detailed threshold. I want you to imagine a doorway, a real doorway, with a frame on either side of you and the solid feeling of a floor beneath your feet. The doorway is large enough that you can stand in it comfortably, neither squeezing through nor dwarfed by it. It fits you. It was made to fit you. Now I want you to turn and look behind you, back through the doorway, back into the space you have been moving through. I want you to let yourself see it. Not with pain, not with regret, but with clear and honest eyes. Let yourself see the long path of this season, the terrain you moved through, the places where you stopped and rested, and sometimes stayed longer than you planned, because you did not have the strength to keep moving. Let yourself see the places where the ground was very rough, the places where the light was very dim, the places where you were alone in a way that the people around you could not have fully understood, even if you had tried to explain it. Look at all of it, the whole length of it, and as you look, I want you to notice something remarkable. Behind you, where you walked, there is a path, a real, visible, traceable path through ground that had no path before you moved through it. You can see where your footsteps landed. You can see where the ground was broken open by your passing. You can see the way that was made, not by someone who went before you, but by you yourself, step by step, in the dark, without a map, without certainty, without the guarantee that the next step would hold before you placed your weight on it. That path behind you is not a record of your struggle. It is a record of your making. Every difficult step was an act of construction. Every painful passage was a piece of the way being laid. You were not just moving through this. You were making it navigable for everyone who is going to follow the path your faithfulness created. Now I want you to notice something else as you look back. You are still standing. After everything that terrain contained, after every rough passage and every dim stretch and every moment of wondering whether the path had an end, you are still standing. Not barely, not on the edge of collapse. Standing, upright, present, real. With everything the journey took from you, it did not take the most important thing. It did not take you, the essential you, the one who carries the frequency, the one who dreams the specific dreams, the one who feels the pull towards something larger, the one who kept making the way when making was the hardest option available. That you is still here, more formed, more particular, more specifically and precisely you than you have ever been before. Now I want you to turn forward, face the direction you are going, and I want you to look out through the threshold into what is ahead. You may not be able to see it clearly yet. You may see only light, or the suggestion of open space, or the feeling of air that is different in quality from the air behind you. That is enough. You do not need to see the full landscape. You just need to feel that there is one, that the threshold is real, that the other side exists, that the open space ahead is not a projection of desperate hope, but a genuine, prepared, intentional place that has been made ready for someone who was made ready for it. And now I want you to feel where you are standing. Right here, in the doorway itself, neither in the terrain behind you, nor yet in the open space ahead. Right here, at the threshold. And I want you to understand something that took me a long time to understand myself. The threshold is not a waiting room. The threshold is not a transitional non-place that you pass through so quickly it barely counts. The threshold is the most sacred geography in the entire journey, because the threshold is the place where you are already out of the old and not yet fully in the new. And in that precise, unrepeatable moment, you carry both the fullness of what the journey made you and the full availability of someone who has not yet been shaped by what comes next. You are, in this moment, simultaneously the most complete version of your past self and the most open version of your future self. And that combination, that specific intersection, is exactly what the Kairos moment requires of the person who receives it. You are already standing at the threshold. You did not need to get here. You are here, and the step forward is not a leap into the unknown. It is a step into the prepared, into the arranged, into the appointed. Now I want to speak a blessing over you, and I want it to be gentle and specific and personal, because you have heard enough general encouragement. What you deserve is something that fits the specific person you are and the specific journey you have made. May the path you made in the dark become visible to you in the light, so that you can see with your own eyes what your faithfulness actually built. May the clarity that has been forming in you find its words this week, arriving not as a demand but as a gift, quietly and at the right moment. May the people who are being sent to you recognize you when they arrive, and may you recognize them too, without the guardedness that the previous season taught you, with the openness that this new season is making safe. May the resources that belong to you begin to find their way to you through channels you did not have to engineer, arriving as confirmation rather than as relief from striving. May the dreams you have been protecting in the interior place where you keep the things too precious to expose find the light they were always meant to grow in, and may that light be gentle enough that they are not overwhelmed by it. May the name I gave you today, Waymaker, settle into you not as a burden of responsibility but as an identity, as a true and dignified and deeply earned description of someone who changed the landscape of their story by the sheer force of their obedient, costly, faithful movement forward. And may you walk forward from this moment with the particular, quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who knows that the path behind them proves the path ahead is possible. You are seen, you are known, you are named, and the way you are making right now, in this very moment, is leading somewhere that was always meant to be yours. You are standing at that threshold right now, and I want you to stay in that feeling as we move into what I am about to share with you. Because everything we have named together in this conversation, the cost of the waiting, the science of what is happening in your brain, the ancient language of Kairos and Kava, the identity of the Waymaker, all of it has been building toward this. The practical, the concrete. The answer to the question that chosen ones eventually ask after all the spiritual, alignment, and all the sacred naming, and all the beautiful, true, necessary language of positioning and preparation. The question that sounds like this, that is all wonderful. But what do I actually do right now, today, with the life I have, and the circumstances I am in, and the resources available to me in this specific moment? I want to answer that question directly, not with vague spiritual advice, not with a list of disciplines that sound good in theory and are impossible to sustain in the reality of a life that is already demanding more than it is giving back. I want to give you 3 specific, concrete, actionable things that you can begin today. Things that are proportional to the season you are in. Things that require not perfection, but presence. And I want to ground each of them in the 3 areas of transformation I described in part 7, because the practical actions of this moment need to be aligned with the areas where movement is already beginning. The first area is clarity, and the practical action that corresponds to it is this. Write down the one thing you have been avoiding starting. Not a list of everything you need to do. Not a comprehensive plan for the next 5 years. Just the one thing. The specific thing that has been living in the back of your mind, sometimes quietly and sometimes loudly. The thing you know you need to begin but have been postponing because it feels too big or too uncertain or too vulnerable to exposure. You know what it is. You have known what it is for longer than you want to admit. It has probably been visiting you in the quiet moments, in the early mornings before the day fully begins, in the space between sleeping and waking, when your defenses are still low enough for the truth to get through. Write it down, not in a journal you keep in a drawer. Write it somewhere you will see it, on a piece of paper you leave on your desk, in the notes application on your phone that you open multiple times a day, somewhere that makes it real, somewhere that takes it out of the interior space where it has been living as a possibility and places it in the exterior world where it becomes an intention. Because there is something that happens neurologically, and this connects directly to what Dr. Rivers has documented in his research on how the brain processes commitment when you externalize an intention. When you write it down, you activate a different set of neural pathways than the ones involved in simply thinking about it. You move it from the realm of fantasy and wish into the realm of plan and purpose. And the brain, once it has registered something as a plan, begins to orient toward it differently. It begins to notice things in the environment that are relevant to it. It begins to make connections that were not visible before the intention was named. So write it down, the one thing, and beneath it, write one small action you can take toward it today. Not the whole project, not the completed version. One action, something that takes less than 30 minutes. Something that moves the needle even slightly in the direction of the thing you have been called to begin. Because the clarity you have been waiting for does not arrive before you start moving. It arrives as you start moving. The first step produces the light for the second step, and the second step produces the light for the third. And the path is made by walking it, which is, of course, exactly what a waymaker does. The second area is relationships, and the practical action that corresponds to it is this. Reach out to one person today who belongs to the next chapter of your story. You already know who this person is, or at least you have a strong sense of it. It might be someone you have been meaning to reconnect with for months, but kept putting off because the timing never felt quite right. It might be someone you met recently and felt that quality of recognition and that sense of arriving home in a conversation you were having for the first time, but you have not followed up because following up felt presumptuous or forward, or like you were asking for something you were not sure you deserved. It might be someone you have never met in person, but whose work or words have been resonating with you in a way that feels like more than admiration. It might be someone specific who came to mind just now as you were reading this. Reach out, a message, a call, an email, something that says I have been thinking about you, or I wanted to follow up on our conversation, or I came across your work and something in it connected with something I have been carrying. You do not need a script. You do not need it to be perfectly worded or strategically timed. You just need to make the contact, because the relational landscape that is being arranged around you right now is not being arranged so that you can observe it from a distance. It is being arranged for you to step into it, and stepping into it requires the willingness to initiate, to be the one who reaches out first, to extend the hand before the handshake is guaranteed. And here is something important I want to say about this. The chosen one in the long waiting season develops a particular kind of relational caution, a guardedness that was earned through real experience, through extending trust, and having it cost more than expected, through opening up and finding that the space was not as safe as it appeared. That guardedness is not a character flaw. It was a necessary protection in the season that required it, but the season that required it is changing. And the relationships that belong to the next chapter of your story cannot be received by someone who is still operating behind the walls that the previous chapter made necessary. The new connections require a new posture, not naivety, not the abandonment of discernment, but a willingness to be slightly more open than feels completely safe. A willingness to let someone see a little more of you than the carefully managed version you have been presenting. A willingness to receive as well as to give, which is, for many chosen ones, the harder of the two. Reach out to one person today. Let the contact be simple and genuine, and trust that the relational landscape already being arranged around you is more trustworthy than the previous one, because it is being arranged by a different hand. The third area is resources and opportunity, and the practical action that corresponds to it is this. Stop blocking what is trying to reach you. I want to explain what I mean by that, because it is perhaps the most counterintuitive of the three actions. Blocking does not always look like blocking. It does not always look like saying no to good things or turning away from open doors. Sometimes blocking looks like being so busy maintaining the structures of survival that you have built over the long season of striving that you have no capacity to receive what is being sent in a different form. Sometimes blocking looks like staying so attached to the specific way you imagined the breakthrough would arrive that you cannot recognize it when it arrives in a different shape. Sometimes blocking looks like the exhausted, automatic continuation of patterns that served you in the striving season, but that are now working against the receiving posture that this new season requires. So the practical action here is an audit. A quiet, honest, non-judgmental audit of where in your life you are currently spending energy on maintaining something that no longer needs to be maintained. Not everything. Not a dramatic dismantling of everything you have built. But one thing, one area where you have been working very hard to hold something in place that might actually be ready to be released. One structure that was necessary in the previous season and that may now be using the energy that the new season needs for different purposes. One habit of straining or pushing or managing that could be replaced, even partially, even for a short period each day, by the posture of open-handed availability that receiving requires. And practically, in the area of resources, I want to say something very direct. There are tools available to you right now that are specifically designed to support the neurological shift that this season requires. The shift from survival frequency to the elevated frequencies of gamma and theta that Dr. Rivers documented in his research. The shift that the genius wave was specifically engineered to support. 7 minutes a day, that is the investment. And the return on that investment is not just the abstract experience of feeling slightly calmer or slightly more focused. The return is the activation of the specific brain states in which insight arrives clearly, in which the right connections become obvious, in which the resources and opportunities that are already being directed toward you become visible, that the survival frequency cannot access. If you have not yet taken that step, I want to encourage you gently to consider it today, not because it is a replacement for anything we have talked about in this message, but because the practical and the spiritual are not separate categories in the life of a chosen one. The brain God gave you is a sacred instrument, and when that instrument is tuned to the frequency it was designed to operate at, the clarity comes faster, the connections form more readily. The path that you are making becomes visible further ahead than it was before. The link is in the pinned comment below. The offer is still available at $39 with the 90-day guarantee. And if something in you said yes during part 4 when I described what the genius wave does, that yes is still valid. Honor it. Now I want to speak to the emotional reality of what it feels like to be in this specific moment. Because even with all the truth and all the practical action and all the naming of what is coming, the feeling inside the transformation is not always triumphant. The feeling inside the transformation is often disorienting. It often feels like loss before it feels like gain, because what is ending, even when what is ending needed to end, still held familiar weight. And the new thing, even when the new thing is genuinely good, is unfamiliar in a way that the nervous system registers as uncertainty. So I want to give you permission to feel disoriented, to feel the strangeness of the threshold, to feel the particular mix of hope and grief and anticipation and fear that belongs to someone who is genuinely in the middle of a significant change. Those feelings are not signs that something is going wrong. They are signs that something is actually happening. Real transformation feels different from imagined transformation. Real movement has a different texture than projected movement. And if you are feeling the disorientation, if you are feeling the strangeness of standing in a doorway between what was and what is coming, that feeling is confirmation. not contradiction. You are not imagining this. You are not projecting. You are not engaging in wishful thinking dressed up in spiritual language. You are a chosen one who obeyed against all odds, who paid a real cost, who is standing at a real threshold, and who is about to walk into a real season of transformation in 3 real, specific, practical areas of your actual life. And the 3 actions I just gave you. Write down the one thing, reach out to one person, and audit where you are blocking what is trying to reach you. Those 3 actions are not magic. They are cooperation. They are your part of the partnership between your willingness and heaven's arrangement. Do them today. Not perfectly. Not all at once if today is already full. But do at least one of them today. Because the waymaker does not make the way by thinking about walking. The waymaker makes the way by walking. And the walking begins with the next step, which is the only step that is ever actually available to anyone. Take the step. The path is already being made beneath your feet, and what is waiting at the end of it is more than you have allowed yourself to fully believe for a very long time. It is time to let yourself believe it again, fully, without the protective qualification of maybe, and hopefully, and if it works out, fully, with the open-handed, clear-eyed, grounded confidence of someone who has been positioned by something larger than circumstance, and is finally walking into what was always meant for them. We are here, you and I together at the end of this conversation, and I want to begin this final part the way I wish more things in your life had begun, with a genuine, unhurried, specific acknowledgement of what it took for you to show up, not just today, not just for this message, but in general. The showing up that has defined your life in this season. The kind of showing up that nobody gave you credit for because it looked, from the outside, like simply being present, like simply continuing, like simply existing in the ordinary way that everyone exists. But you and I both know that for a chosen one in a long and costly season, simply continuing is not simple at all. It is one of the most demanding things a human being can do. And you did it. Day after day, in seasons that gave you very little in return, you showed up. You did not always show up perfectly. You did not always show up feeling ready or hopeful or strong. Sometimes you showed up running on empty, showing up anyway because some part of you, some deep, unkillable, heaven-placed part of you refused to stop. That part of you is the reason you are here right now, and I want to honor it before we say anything else. Thank you for showing up, not just today, for all of it. I also want you to know something that I think you need to hear, and I want to say it plainly, without decorating it into something more comfortable than it is. There is a part of you that came to this message not fully trusting it, not fully trusting me, not fully trusting the language, not fully trusting the possibility that something said in a video on a screen could actually meet you in the specific, particular, real place where you are living your life. That part of you has been burned before. It has extended trust and had the trust cost more than it was worth. It has believed in things that did not deliver. It has shown up for things that turned out not to be what they appeared. And that part of you, the careful, guarded, show me the evidence part, is not your enemy. It is the part of you that has been protecting the most tender things, the dreams that are still alive, the faith that is still breathing even when it is breathing quietly, the hope that refused to fully die, even in the darkest passages of this season. I am not asking that part of you to stand down. I am asking it to notice something. Notice that something in this message, even in the middle of the caution, even past the guardedness and the reasonable skepticism, landed. Something was named that you recognized. Something was said that fit the specific shape of what you have been carrying. And that recognition is not the result of clever language or emotional manipulation. That recognition is the result of truth, finding a place in you that was already waiting for it. Truth does not require you to abandon your discernment. Truth simply asks that your discernment be honest enough to recognize it when it arrives. Something true arrived today. Let it stay. Now I want to tell you something about the people who are sitting with this message right now alongside you. Because you are not alone in this, and I do not want you to carry the weight of your season as if aloneness is one of its defining features. All across the world, right now, in time zones I cannot fully count, in languages that I did not write this in, but that carry the same frequency underneath the words, other chosen ones are walking into this exact same message. They are sitting with the same recognition you are sitting with. They are feeling the same specific landing of truth in the same specific tender places. They are carrying the same particular combination of exhaustion and hope, of grief and anticipation, of weariness and the undeniable sense that something is about to shift. You are in a room right now that is far more populated than it appears. The aloneness of the waiting season made the room feel empty. But it was never empty. There have always been others. Others who obeyed against all odds. Others who paid the cost that nobody counted. Others who kept making the way when making was the hardest available option. They are here right now, in this moment, reading what you are reading, feeling what you are feeling, standing at thresholds that look different in their specific details, but that share the same essential geography as yours. You are not alone. You have never been alone. And the community of chosen ones, invisible as it often feels, is real, and it is large, and it is made up of people whose faithfulness, like yours, has been recorded by something that does not miss a single act of quiet obedience. Now I want to give you one final exercise before we close, and I want you to take it seriously, not as a spiritual performance, but as a genuine, practical, physical act of release that your body and your spirit both need. I want you to imagine one more time the threshold we stood at together in part 8. You are there again, standing in the doorway, the path behind you visible, the open space ahead of you real and prepared and waiting. And I want you to become aware in this moment of what you are carrying, not in the metaphorical sense only, but in the physical sense. Feel the weight of it in your body, in your shoulders where chosen ones tend to carry the things they are responsible for, in your chest where the grief and the hope and the unexpressed things tend to live, in your jaw, which has been set for longer than you realize against the strain of holding everything in place, in your hands, which have been holding so many things for so long that releasing feels unfamiliar and slightly dangerous. Feel all of that weight. Give it a moment to be fully felt. Not dramatized, not amplified, just honestly felt. This is what you have been carrying. This is the real weight of the real season. And it is significant. It is not nothing. It is not something that a simple declaration dissolves. It is real weight that a real person has been carrying for a real length of time. And you have carried it faithfully. And you have carried it with more grace than you have given yourself credit for. And now I want you to do something with it. I want you to imagine, at the threshold where you are standing, a place to set it down, not to throw it away, not to pretend it was not real, but to set it down deliberately and with intention, the way you would set down a heavy bag at the end of a very long journey. Not because the journey was wrong to make, not because the things in the bag were not worth carrying, but because you have arrived somewhere. And the things that belong to the carrying season do not all need to come with you into the arriving season. Some of them were for the journey. Some of them were weight that served the making of the way, and that can now with gratitude for what they built in you. Be set down at the threshold. Set them down, one by one if you need to. The grief of the relationships that did not get built, set it down. The shame of the career ground you did not cover, set it down. The careful guarded version of the dream that you stopped saying out loud. Set it down and let it return to the full, unguarded, openly spoken version it was always meant to be. The quiet erosion of faith in yourself. Set it down and let something more accurate take its place. The exhaustion of the striving. Set it down. The guardedness that protected what was precious in the hard season. Thank it for its service and set it down, because the open space ahead requires open hands. Set it all down at the threshold and feel, even slightly, even just as a beginning, the difference in your body when the weight is not in your hands anymore. Now walk forward, not in your imagination only, in your actual life. With the 3 actions from Part 9 as your beginning, with the 7 minutes of the genius wave as your daily tuning, with the name Waymaker as the identity you carry into every room, every conversation, every opportunity, every moment of recognition that this new season brings. Walk forward as someone who has been backed, not by their own strength alone, not by their own perfect record of faithfulness, not by their ability to explain their journey in a way that makes sense to everyone around them, but by heaven itself, which watched the whole thing, recorded the whole thing, honored the whole thing, and is now, in this specific Kairos moment, moving on your behalf in ways that your circumstances are about to begin reflecting. Now I want to ask something of you, and I want to ask it in the most natural way I know how, because it deserves to be asked naturally and not performed. This channel, this space, this ongoing conversation between chosen ones and the language that honors their season exist because people who found something real here decided to help it reach the next person. Not for me, not to build something that benefits only the people already inside it, but so that the next chosen one, the one who is going to arrive here next week at 3 in the morning, running on empty, in a season that has taken more than they can fully account for, the next one who needs someone to name what they are carrying in the specific, honest, unhurried way that we named yours today, that person can find this, can be met here, can hear the truth that their circumstances have not yet been able to speak to them. If this message met you somewhere real today, I am asking you to like it, not as a transaction, but as a signal that travels through whatever algorithm governs this space and points more chosen ones in this direction. Share it with the one person in your life who you know is carrying the weight of the waiting season and who has not yet had it named for them. Subscribe so that the next time something is prepared for you in this space, it finds you without you having to go looking for it. And if you are in a position to donate, whatever amount reflects what today was worth to you, please consider it. Not for me, so that this message can reach another chosen one who is waking into their Monday without anyone to name it for them, without anyone to sit with them in the wait before offering the reframe, without anyone to say, in specific and honest language, that the cost was real, and the positioning is real, and the Kairos moment is real, and heaven has been backing them through every single step of the way they have been making in the dark. Your support, in whatever form it takes, is itself an act of a waymaker. It makes a way for the next person, and that is entirely consistent with who you are. And one more thing before I let you go. If the genius wave met you somewhere in the middle of this message, if the description of what it does and what it activates and what Dr. Rivers spent more than 30 years documenting landed in a place of genuine recognition, then I want you to know that it is waiting for you in the pinned comment below. $39, 90-day guarantee. 7 minutes a day. The tool is simple. What it unlocks is not. And if something in you said yes, honor that yes. The link is there. It is the right link. It is the only link I vouch for. And what is waiting on the other side of consistent use is exactly the kind of clarity and connection and elevated thinking that this season of your life is calling for. You came here today with something heavy. I hope you are leaving with something lighter and something more. Not the lightness of having the weight ignored or minimized, but the lightness of having it seen and honored and set down at the threshold by someone who was willing to stay in it with you before asking you to move forward. That is what you deserved. That is what I wanted to give you. And I hope, in some real measure, that it arrived. Walk forward, Waymaker. The path beneath your feet is already being made. Heaven is already backing you. And the season that is opening in front of you is more than you have allowed yourself to fully believe for a very long time. It is time to believe it fully, and it begins right now.